The prairie wind howled across the wide open land, rattling the loose boards of the old ranch house. Inside, James Carter sat slumped in a wooden chair, his arms heavy from exhaustion. His broad shoulders, once strong from years of ranch work, seemed to sag under a weight no man should have to bear. Just a week ago, his wife Mary had been alive, smiling faintly as she held their newborn son against her chest. Now, the house was silent except for the soft, desperate cries of the infant, cries that cut through James's chest like a knife. Mary had died during childbirth. The midwife had tried everything, but fate had been cruel. One moment James had been a husband with hope for a bright future. The next, he was a widower with a tiny baby who needed milk, warmth, and love. But the baby was hungry. Always hungry. James tried cow's milk, watered down, but it upset the child. He boiled oats to make a thin gruel, but the baby spat it out, choking and wailing. Each night James rocked his son in his arms, whispering broken promises, praying to God for strength. He hardly ate. He hardly slept. He was a strong man, yet he felt powerless. Every time he looked at the crib, he thought of Mary, her laughter, her gentle voice, her last words before her eyes closed forever. Take care of our boy. Promise me. The promise burned in his soul. By the fourth night, James thought he might lose the baby too. The cries had weakened into soft whimpers. The child's lips were dry, his tiny fists trembling. Panic twisted James's heart. He paced the room, whispering, "Please, son, hold on. Daddy's here. Daddy's here!" But he had nothing to give. The ranch felt like a prison of silence and grief. Outside, the cattle lowed in the distance, unfed and unattended. Inside, the baby whimpered like a fading candle. James dropped to his knees in the dim lamplight, tears streaking down his unshaven face. For the first time in years, the strong rancher prayed aloud. "Lord, I don't care what happens to me. Just don't take him too. Send me something, someone, anything." As if in answer, a knock sounded at the door. James froze. Out here in the middle of the prairie, visitors were rare, especially at night. He hesitated, clutching the baby to his chest, then rose and opened the door. There she was. A woman stood in the doorway, her face pale, her hair damp from the night mist. She looked young, perhaps no more than 25, and her eyes were red as if she had been crying for hours. In her arms she carried a small bundle, though not a baby, just a tattered shawl. Her clothes were plain, travel-worn, and then James noticed her chest. Full, swollen with milk, her voice trembled when she spoke. "Please, I heard the crying. I just lost my own baby last week. He never took a breath after birth. My body still... I can't." Her voice broke. "But I can help yours." For a long moment, James just stared, unable to move, unable to think. It was as if fate itself had sent this stranger to his door. His throat tightened. The baby whimpered weakly against his shoulder. The woman stepped closer, her eyes brimming with both grief and determination. "Let me feed him, please. I can't bear hearing a child cry when I still have what he needs." James's jaw clenched. He was a proud man, a man not used to needing anyone. But pride meant nothing when his son's life was on the line. Slowly he nodded and held the baby out to her. The woman's arms trembled as she took the tiny bundle. She sat in James's worn chair, unfastened her dress, and brought the child to her breast. Within seconds the baby latched on, sucking desperately, greedily. The sound of swallowing filled the silence. James turned away, covering his face with his hands. Relief, grief, and something he couldn't name surged through him all at once. His son was eating. His son would live. The woman looked down at the baby with tears streaming down her cheeks. "There now. Drink, little one. Drink for both of us." That night the ranch no longer felt empty. Her name was Clara. She was a widow herself, her husband gone in a logging accident months earlier. She had come west seeking work, a place to forget her pain, but fate had given her a different purpose. James listened quietly as she spoke in fragments, her voice breaking while the baby nursed peacefully in her arms. When she looked up at him, their eyes met, not as strangers, but as two souls broken by loss, tied together by the fragile thread of a child's survival. For the first time since Mary's death, James felt something stir inside him. Not joy, not yet, but the faint warmth of hope. And in that small ranch house, in the quiet of the night, a new chapter began. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're diving into a deeply moving story that speaks to the resilience of the human spirit and the unexpected paths that life can take. Imagine a rancher, sitting alone in the stillness of his home, grappling with the weight of loss. His wife has passed, leaving him to care for their newborn, who is fighting for survival. In the quiet moments, he tries everything he can think of to keep his baby alive, pouring all his love and energy into a situation that feels increasingly hopeless. The nights stretch on, filled with worry and desperation, and in his darkest hour, he finds himself praying for a miracle. Then, one fateful evening, there's a knock at the door. Standing there is a grieving woman, her heart heavy with her own sorrow, yet she carries the promise of life. In that moment, two broken hearts meet, and from their shared pain, something beautiful begins to blossom. This story is not just about loss. It's about hope and the incredible ways in which love can emerge from tragedy. It reminds us that even in our darkest times, we can find connection and healing in the most unexpected places. As we explore this journey together, let's reflect on the power of compassion and the strength that comes from opening our hearts to others. Thank you for joining me today. If this story resonated with you, consider following or subscribing for more heartfelt narratives that inspire and uplift. Your support means the world. The morning sun crept over the wide plains, spilling golden light through the cracked windows of the ranch house. James awoke stiff in his chair, the faint sound of soft cooing pulling him back from exhausted dreams. He looked across the room. Clara sat by the fire, rocking the baby gently against her chest. The child was sleeping soundly, his tiny lips still glistening from milk. For the first time in days, James didn't hear desperate wails. Instead, there was peace. He rubbed his face with rough hands. Part of him thought last night had been a dream, some mercy his mind invented. But it was real. Clara had come. She had saved his son. When she looked up, her tired eyes met his. Neither spoke for a long moment. Finally, James cleared his throat. "I don't know how to thank you." Clara shook her head. "Don't thank me. He gave me something too, purpose. After losing my own child, I thought I'd never hold life again." Her voice cracked, but she steadied it, stroking the baby's soft hair. "This feels like healing." James swallowed hard. He wasn't good with words, but he felt the weight of hers settle into him. He poured her coffee, the only gesture he could think of, and the two sat in silence while the baby slept. Days turned to weeks. Clara didn't leave. At first, James thought she'd stay only a night or two, just long enough to nurse the baby back to strength. But days turned into weeks, and she remained, quietly tending the infant, helping in the kitchen, even mending the rancher's torn shirts with careful stitches. James tried to resist it, the way her presence filled the empty house. He still grieved Mary deeply. Every time Clara hummed softly to the baby, his heart ached with the memory of his wife's lullabies. Yet Clara was not Mary, and somehow that was a comfort. She wasn't replacing his wife. She was helping him survive. Sometimes, late at night, James would hear Clara crying softly in the spare room. She mourned her own baby, the one who hadn't taken a breath. He wanted to comfort her, but he never found the right words. Instead, he made sure the fire never went out at night and that her room stayed warm. It was his quiet way of saying, "You're not alone." The bond grows. The baby, named Samuel, after James's father, thrived under Clara's care. His cheeks filled out, his cries became stronger, and laughter soon replaced his weak whimpers. Clara smiled more too, though her eyes still carried shadows. One evening, James returned from the fields, sweat and dust clinging to him. He paused in the doorway, watching Clara in the rocking chair with Samuel giggling in her lap. The sound was like music, a melody that healed wounds he hadn't realized were still bleeding. "Seems he likes you better than me," James said gruffly, setting down his hat. Clara looked up, a small smile tugging at her lips. "He just knows where the food comes from." For the first time in months, James chuckled. The sound surprised him, and her. Their eyes met, and in that quiet exchange, something unspoken passed between them. A warmth, a recognition. Struggles of two hearts, but life was not simple. People in the nearby town began to talk. A widower living with a young woman under his roof. It was bound to stir whispers. James didn't care much for gossip, but Clara did. One evening she told him she should leave, that her presence might dishonor his wife's memory. James's jaw tightened. "If anyone's got a problem, let 'em come say it to my face." You saved my boy's life. You're family now. Clara blinked back tears. Family? Yes. His voice softened. Mary would have wanted him safe. She would have wanted me to keep my promise. That night Clara stayed. But in her heart, she knew her role was more than that of a nurse. She was becoming something else to James, something neither of them dared name aloud. Love in silence. Months passed. The seasons shifted. Samuel grew stronger, crawling across the wooden floors, his laughter filling every corner of the house. Clara's milk eventually dried, but by then the baby was ready for soft foods. Still, Samuel clung to Clara, reaching for her whenever she left the room. James worked the ranch, but his evenings were no longer lonely. He found himself listening for Clara's voice, watching the way the firelight caught the strands of her hair, noticing the small smile she gave when Samuel reached for him instead of her. One evening, as a storm raged outside, the three of them sat together by the hearth. Samuel had fallen asleep in Clara's arms, his tiny hand curled around her finger. James stared into the flames, wrestling with the feelings he had tried to bury. Finally he spoke. I never thought I'd say this again. But I don't feel alone anymore. Clara turned to him, her eyes shimmering. Neither do I. For a long moment the storm outside faded. There was only the crackle of fire, the steady breath of the sleeping child, and the quiet truth settling between them. A new beginning spring came. The ranch bloomed with wildflowers, and Samuel toddled through the grass with unsteady steps. James and Clara walked behind him side by side. At the fence line, James stopped and turned to her. His voice was low but steady. Clara, I know we've both lost more than we ever thought we could bear. But out of that loss, we found each other. You gave me back my son. You gave me back my life. I don't want to go another day without asking you this. Will you stay? Not just as his nurse, not just as family, as my wife. Clara's hand flew to her mouth, tears welling in her eyes. For a moment she couldn't speak, only nod. When the words finally came, they trembled but were full of conviction. Yes, James. 1,000 times yes. James pulled her into his arms, Samuel squealing with laughter between them. For the first time in so long, James felt whole. The ranch was no longer a place of sorrow. It was alive again, with the sound of a child's laughter, the touch of new love, and the unbreakable bond of two souls who had found healing in each other. And in the wide-open silence of the prairie, their love spoke louder than any words. Welcome, everyone! Today we're diving into a heartwarming story that reminds us of the incredible power of love and connection. It all began when she arrived in town, a stranger with a quiet strength that caught the attention of a grieving rancher and his young son. Days turned into weeks, and what started as a simple friendship blossomed into something much deeper. As they navigated their shared pain, broken hearts began to heal. The town couldn't help but whisper about this unexpected bond, but to the rancher, she was no longer just an outsider. She had become family. Through the storms of grief, love grew in silence, nurturing a connection that neither of them had anticipated. They found solace in each other, creating a safe haven amidst the chaos of their lives. Then, one beautiful spring day, the rancher gathered his courage and asked the only question that truly mattered. Will you stay, not just as family, but as my wife? This moment encapsulates the essence of their journey, a testament to how love can emerge from the most unexpected places, transforming lives and healing wounds. Thank you for joining me on this emotional journey today. If you enjoyed this story and want to hear more uplifting tales, please consider following or subscribing. Your support means the world.